Hi everyone, it's Radhika. Welcome back to DataZard. If you are new to my channel, then please do consider subscribing as I don't want you to miss out on any future videos. Today we are going to be solving Workout Wednesday 2021 Week 48 challenge and we are going to create this waffle chart. So without further ado, let's jump into our Power BI desktop. For today's challenge, data comes from an Excel file. So I will click on import data from Excel and choose the Excel file and click on open. I will choose the orders table as we only want orders and click on transform data to see how it has been loaded. In Power Query Editor, we can see that the column headers have loaded all right as well as the data. So I will just click on close and apply. Let us start by creating a table in which we are going to store all the measures that are needed in this challenge. So I will click on enter data and call this table as key measures and click on load. Now the first measure that I'm going to create, I'll call this total sales, which will be equal to sum of the sales column in the orders table. We need to calculate the total sales for each segment as well as the percentage of sales of the segment in the total sales. So for that, I'm going to create measure for each of these segments. We have three segments in this table. So let us get a new measure. I will first get the consumer segment sales. That will be equal to, we are going to use a calculate function because we have to change the context of the total sales measure. So this time we need to calculate total sales where the order segment is equal to consumer as we are getting the consumer segment sales. Now in a similar way, I'll just copy this and create two more measures, one for the corporate segment, and for that the segment here should be corporate, and another measure for the home office segment. So I'll replace consumer with home office and the rest of the logic remains same. Now these are the total sales values, but we also need to find the percentage this segment contributes to the total sales. So for that we'll need three more measures. Percent sales of consumer segment, and that will be equal to, we just need to divide our consumer segment sales by the total sales, and I'll keep the alternate result as 0. I will also format this measure. So we need to multiply this by 100 so that we can get the percentage value, as this is just going to give us the decimal value. And I will also round it to 0 decimal places as we do not need any decimal places. So let's say if I bring this here, we can see that it is 51. And I can just click on this measure and select 0 decimal places. Similarly, I'm just going to copy this and do the same thing for for corporate segment. And here I will replace this with corporate sales. And lastly, for the home office segment. And I'll replace this with home office. So showing back the challenge, we have figured out this 51%, these sales, all of these numbers we have figured out. Last thing that we need to figure out is when we have selected one of these segments, then the value changes over here. Like here it is copiers, then it is papers and copiers. So we need what is the selected value from this slicer. So for that, let's go back to our Power BI desktop and create another measure, which will give us what are the selected values from this slicer. I'll create a new measure and call it selected subcategories. Now we need to do an if statement to say if there is a selection made or not. So I'll say if there is a selection made, then for that we need to use is filtered, and we can say if the subcategory is filtered, then what do we want? So we want to concatenate the values because there could be multiple selections as well. So I'm going to use concatenate X. So the first thing that we need to give to this function is a table. I'll say all selected because we need to find all the selections which are there on the subcategory. Now we need to give an expression. What do we need to find? So we just need to find the subcategory. So I'll say orders subcategory. What should be the delimiter? So we're going to say comma is our separator or the delimiter. We need to order this by again subcategory in ascending order. So I'll say ascending order. And if this is not filtered, so if this condition is not true, then all I want to print is all. And then I'll close off the bracket. We're going to use these measures later on. Let us first start building our dashboard. I'll remove this. So first I'll get the visuals. So I'll click on get more visuals. And the first chart that I'm going to get will be a waffle chart. So I'll search waffle here and select this one. And I'll click on add. Next, we need to get chiclet slicer. So again, I'll click on these three dots and get more visuals. I'll search for chiclet slicer and again add it. Let us start building our waffle chart. So I'll select waffle chart and on category data, I'll bring in segment, and on values, I forgot to create a measure. So let's just create that quickly because that's what we have to bring in values. So I'll right click and say percent of grand total sales. So we need to calculate the total sales for each segment. And to do that, I will first take a total sales variable. Why we are using variable is because we want to remove all the context which is coming from each of these segments here. So what I'll do is I'll use a calculate function and I'll calculate total sales. And to remove all the context, I will say all and orders. So this will give me the overall total sales no matter what the filter context is anywhere in the visual. And now I can do a return statement and then do calculate. We need to calculate again the total sales for all the segments. That's why I'll do orders, values, and order segment. I'll close off this bracket. We need to divide this by the total sales variable that we have created above. Ensure that this is total sales variable and not the total sales measure that you have created. Otherwise, it's going to be 100%. We will then enclose this in a bracket and multiply it by 100 so that we get 100% value, like a percentage value, not a decimal number. And then I'm just going to use a round function so that we can format this properly. So round, and I will round this to 0 decimal places. So now when we bring this percent of grand sales in the grand total sales in the values, then we get this percentage value. Now the next thing that we need to do is change these circles into squares, and to do that we need to find a SVG path. There was a link given in the challenge in which when you place your SVG file, it's going to give you the SVG file path. I was not able to use that, but when I searched on Google, I found out a waffle image. So I'm going to give the details of the text that I'm using in the description of this video. So to put that SVG file path, I will click on enter data and call this SVG path. I'll call this column path and paste that value here and click on load. Now once this table has loaded, I'll click on the waffle chart and I'll bring this path into the path here, which is going to replace the circles with squares like this in the visual. Now let us just format this. So for formatting, let's open the formatting pane. We don't want the title, so I'll turn off the title. For data point, I'm going to change the color of these data points. So to match the color, I'll go to consumer in data point, choose more color and add the color. Similarly, I'll do the same for corporate and for home office. So we can select this color. Now we need to add chiclet slicer. So I'll add the chiclet slicer, and in this we need the subcategories. So I'll go to orders table and choose the subcategory. To format this for header, we need select an item. Let's give it 13. For chiclets, let us also size them as 13. Selected color should be this blue color, and unselected color should be this color. Now we don't want the outline, so I'll select the outline color same as the previous color. And now in general, we just want one column, so I'll keep it as one column. And now we just need the text here. So for that text, I'll create another measure. So I'll click on here a new measure, and I'll call this text box text. That will be equal to, now we just need to concatenate all of the things. Let me increase the size here, and I'll start writing it. Of all the superset sales made, then we need to concatenate this by the percent of consumer sales. So I'll add ampersand and say percent of consumer sales. Then again an ampersand, and then work from the consumer segment with a total of, and then again an ampersand. We need to get the consumer sales. So consumer segment sales measure that we have created earlier. Then again an ampersand, and in this we will write in sales. Then again ampersand, and then we need to get the percent of corporate sales. So I'll say percent of sales corporate segment. Then again an ampersand, and then we need to write came from the corporate sector representing. Then again ampersand. Now the total amount of corporate sales. So corporate sales segment amount. Then again an ampersand. Write the remaining. Now we need to give the remaining percent, which is the home office segment. So percent of home office segment. Again an ampersand. Of sales came from home office sector representing. Then again an ampersand. We need to find the home office segment sales. And then lastly, the full stop. It will make more sense when I will put this in the text box. So let's get into the card visual. And for call out values, let's give it size 18. We don't want the category label, so turning that off. Now this is how it looks like. We just need to format this. These numbers have auto-corrected themselves, so I've not made any changes. In text box, we need to add a space here. And we need to change these numbers as well because their formatting looks off. So let us add a few things here. So after this, we need a percent because it is 51%. Same for these sales, percent, and here percent. So that 51%, 31%, and 19%. Now for these numbers, We don't need the decimal part, we only need the whole number part. So let's go to sales. And again, we are going to use the round function. So round, and we need to give it 0 decimal places. Same for corporate segment. Let's enclose this in a round and to 2 decimal places. And lastly, for home office segment also, enclosing this in round and to 2 decimal places, to 0 decimal places. Now we also need to put dollar signs here. So before this, representing this amount, representing this amount with a total of this. So now this looks much better. I have hard coded this incorrectly. So here it should be ampersand, and then we get the selected subcategory measure that we have created. So then it's going to change it. And we need to give space here and a space here. So if we say of bookcases and chairs, so all of this is now dynamic. Lastly, we just need to add a text box which says super sales, superstore sales data by sector. Let's give it 18. Font color should be this one, and the background color should be this blue. After tidying this up, this is how it looks like. If we select bookcases, all of this is dynamic, even this is dynamic, and these numbers also change depending on how much bookcases have contributed to each segment. That's it for the challenge. I hope you have learned something new from this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.